First Gen Wealth, we talk about an entrepreneur's journey to creating wealth. I've got a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, a lot of peers that they're brought up with money and the ability to handle and figure that out. Finding dollars has always been easy. Finding a deal, making money, I can do that. What to do with it to make it continue to earn so we do have that generational wealth, that's the missing piece. We want our money that we've earned through blood, sweat, and tears to now go to work for us. So that money is making money while we're sleeping. All right, welcome back. This is First Gen Wealth, Episode 8, Season 2. I'm Randy Woodworth, here with Jim Woodworth, my best brother that I have.
The best.
Truly.
Mm-hmm.
Truly. One and only, actually, so it's low bar.
I'm also the worst.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it makes you the best and the worst. All right. So I want to talk about something we just briefly touched on a couple episodes ago. When we were talking about development and incentives and getting into that stuff, and you mentioned the risks, and I said that's a whole nother episode. Here we are. This is that episode. So we're going to talk about some of the shit we've ran into, like some stuff that's absolutely put the brakes on us, some hurdles we've had to overcome, and just kind of some expectations, I guess, as you go forward in your real estate portfolio development, and then, maybe hopefully taking a leap and doing some things that are impactful to your hometown and doing some development maybe. So what can we expect, bro? Like what would be your thing? Like I got a whole head full.
Yeah.
But I'd like to hear from you because I unfortunately dragged you into this mess.
You did. You did. So I can tell you
what would you wish I would have said?
Well, here's what I wish I would have known and just had a better idea about, because there was a time probably in 2015-ish where in my mind I'm thinking, I'm done with this shit.
Yeah.
Like it's not worth it. And that is, so two things that I really didn't anticipate or expect or didn't fully understand. And that is when you build out a property to get a tenant and you're investing some of your own money in that, and then let's say that tenant doesn't make it.
Yeah.
That sucks. And it's hard to go after. We've kind of redesigned our leases where it's a little easier now, but it's hard to go after somebody that's just failed and went bankrupt on a business to go after that investment or that, the rest of that lease.
And that's a punch in the gut because you spent your money for
their
money thing.
For them, and their business failed for whatever reason. It could have been, for whatever reason. So I'm out all the money for their store that they no longer occupy.
Yeah.
Now I've got to somehow attract a different tenant for that store that's probably not going to want that store. So they have to
Right.
do another build out or whatever. And on top of that, when you are relying on somebody else, so for me, I'm relying on you as my broker to go out and find me a tenant. So I get a tenant in there. I pay a commission to you.
Yep.
For,
Thank you.
You're
Good man.
welcome. And usually give me kind of a discount sometimes.
No, we don't.
Sometimes not, but Todd doesn't, but you do.
Oh.
But anyway, so I'm paying a commission. I just bought a build out or paid for some build out, and then I got to do it all over again.
Yeah.
And I remember, the old Radio Shack building was the one where I'm like, this is stupid. Like I'm just spending money, not seeing any reward. And that was after we had spent a lot of money on the Foster Coffee / Lily Pearls build out, and the same thing. But it was so early on in both of those where it was like all it was spend.
Yep.
With no gratification of financial return.
Sure.
So it was early on, it was really like an eye-opening experience of like, all I'm doing is spending money. And if I didn't have a really good W-2 job, I couldn't have done that.
Right.
So that was something early on that I learned, like, you got to kind of like figure that stuff
So risk
out.
management is what I would say. So with that, there's a fine line and there's a balance between wanting a tenant and especially wanting a tenant that makes sense for our downtown, because I think we were leaning a little bit in favor of something that we thought was cool over what their financial wherewithal was, right? Mm-hmm. And in the case of the yogurt shop, I think we had a really good tenant.
We did.
But then they moved to Florida and sold their business. And then that lease, that was allowed.
Yeah.
Now, you're right. That has been perfected a little bit. You get to pull financials on the new buyer. Like there's some things that can happen. Like they don't just get to turn it over without your blessing, because your lease was based on their financial wherewithal. And Gallagher's were good. I mean,
They were really good.
Yeah, they're good people. They did it, and they spent some money.
Yep, they did.
But then the next one didn't work out. And so now you're stuck with a yogurt shop and no yogurt operator. And then another yogurt shop opened up down the street. So, and it's hard to compete with Cone Zone. I mean, man,
I know. It's just talking about legacy.
There you go.
They've got their own thing going on.
Prescott legacy for sure.
But I think you were trying to get it more maybe into like some like specific to development, like what?
Yeah. So
unexpected expenses or.
So for you, like you wished you would have understood that, to put that in a nutshell, that you might not have that tenant you just spent the money on.
Right.
Like that's a real thing.
Well, I think for me too, like it's also, why are you getting into it? And what's your long-term vision? What are your long-term goals? For me, I got into it because you're my big brother and you said, you need to do this. And I always tell people there's always a deal. Like, don't get mad if you missed out on it, because there's always a deal. I know that for a fact because my brother always tells me there is. So, and we had just come off success on, we bought a building just west of town on M21, a little like car repair shop or whatever, and flipped it really quick and made money. And I was like,
let's do more.
This is easy. This is so easy. I make money. It's all you got to do is, do this, do that. And then, so I don't think I necessarily had like, what does this look like long-term? What do I want long-term? And how does all this fit into what those goals are?
In the end, I think you did okay on the Radio Shack building.
In the end, we did, but that's,
we did great. That was a 7-year.
But that's the point.
7.
Like if you're getting into it thinking like, because especially now, there's all sorts of social media influencers, or all you see is the success stories.
Yeah.
You don't see all of the work and all of the sacrifice and all of the investment and tenants not paying. You don't see the negative side effects because people aren't going to share those stories.
Correct.
They want to prop themselves out and sell you on whatever they're doing or whatever their educational materials they're, trying to sell you.
And for me, I think the older I get, the longer we go, the more value I find in having a good team behind it. And what I'm saying that is like my architect, the civil engineer, the attorney, like in case in point for me, there's the Matthews building.
Yeah.
So we bought that 2015, 2014, something like that, 2013.
Yeah, it was I think earlier than that. Yeah.
It was early on. And we hired a GC.
General contractor.
Yep, general contractor. They hired through us, I guess, an architect. And of course, we wanted to do a brewery project there. So we hired an architect who had experience with building a brewery out of Grand Rapids. And we went down this path. And when we were pitched the idea, we had a budget. It was around $5 million, like 4.8, I think it was, right? That project made sense. We can do all this and do it all for 4.8 million. This makes sense. Well, $600,000 later, and what I'm saying is 600,000 was architects, engineers,
consulting,
environmental consultants, environmental reports, soil boring, geotechnical report. I mean, you name
mortgage payments, taxes, insurance,
all of it. It was, there's a lot that goes into a big project. And that architect wasn't the cheapest architect, but he had the experience we needed. So that's the way we went. But what he didn't have was anybody on our end that had done that to kind of monitor the expenses he was creating on paper. And what I mean by that is all the work that he had kind of built into this project with the finishes and the design ended up being very expensive. So he didn't know our budget. He did, but he didn't really, there was nobody in there that was saying, no, we can't do that because here's the number we got to stick by. Well, we get down to the wire, and the MEDC has got their offer to us for a grant and a loan. So they were going to lend 1.7 or 1.5, and then, or they were going to grant 1 point whatever, and then lend another $1 million or something like that. But the numbers that were coming back, a year later, after all this exploratory demo and all this build and yada yada, it was like almost 8 million, almost double. Well, that don't make no sense at all. And so I think the importance of having a team that understands like every decision along the way, every doorknob, every floor fixture, every soundproof, everything you decide along the way is dollars you're going to be required to spend to make it happen. So we got a lot better at that.
Yeah.
In the apartment build that's going on above us right now is a perfect example. Like I'm like, no, we don't need that.
Yeah.
It's a total unnecessary.
Well, architects, I mean, their job, like, think about if like you're an artist.
Oh yeah.
And you get to like design or paint the most beautiful picture without like having any consequences of, I don't care if this guy can afford it or not. It's not my money I'm spending. So I remember one of the massive expenses at the Matthews building was this beautiful spiral staircase going up to the second floor of the brewery or whatever, wasn't it?
Yeah, oh yeah, there's
and and it's like it was like a $250,000 thing.
Well, we got the red marker out and got the pages out. I mean, I keep looking over to my left because there's a $350,000 set of blueprints over there that never got built.
Yeah.
It's got to go up on the wall of shame here somewhere. But we got that red marker out and we started doing what we call value engineering, right? So now we're going through, all right, what can and can't happen here. So at the end of the day, though, you became part of that project, but originally I had 3 partners. And that's another thing. If you go into a partnership project, make sure everyone's vision is aligned. Because in the case of the Matthews building, I would have taken it forward with those 2 guys, but they stood up from the table and walked away because what their return to them wasn't great enough to mess with.
And they didn't care about all the money that was already invested. They're like, nope, I'm out. Like, it doesn't matter. And that's how I came into it.
Yep.
Because we needed to somehow still make it happen. And that's where you say, okay, they're willing to just basically walk away. You just have to buy into their ownership. And here we are.
Yeah.
But you said, making sure your partners have that shared vision. Well, how long does that shared vision last?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of that one and then 3 others that we've had different partners with. And there's a reason why you've been saying for the last 2 years, there's no one out. I'm never entering into another partnership again unless it's my brother.
Yeah.
Because we have the J.C. Penney building, we have the Foster Lily Pearl building, this building that we're sitting in, the Woodworth building, that I'm all involved with now, that the partnership, and it's because I'm either getting involved because other people have stepped away or we've bought out partners because the vision no longer was aligned. And that doesn't mean that they're right or we're right, or it just means that somewhere along the lines, the vision of everyone changed. So just because it's a shared vision today,
True,
doesn't mean it's going to be a shared vision 5 years from now. Once you're starting to lay out this capital and unexpected expenses come into play, or their lives change, they have kids, they get divorced, they get married, like all of these things come into play. And that's why there's that saying, like, the only ship that's guaranteed to sink is a partnership. I don't know if you've ever heard that or something.
Well, I heard
something along
the only
those
ship
lines.
that won't sail is a partnership.
Okay, so similar line of thinking.
Yeah.
Like, so partnerships are really important. And if you're getting into real estate with somebody else, regardless of who it is, there's a significant risk. And even you and I at sometimes, even though we're all in for this community, we want to see development happen. Like we disagree on shit all the time. That's like, and it's never been to the point where like we're splitting up.
Yeah.
But it's like we have to agree. If it's a 50-50 partnership, we have to agree on that path forward. And that's hard to do sometimes.
Right.
And so I think one of the biggest things that could a potential risk is who are you in bed with to
Yep.
do whatever deal.
Yep.
So you got to really choose carefully, and you really have to think out like, okay, if we start to disagree, how are we gonna figure it out?
Yeah, and I think part of that is, there's a saying, it's not what you own, it's what you control. So, being the controlling partner in partnerships is important if it's possible. Now, if you're new and coming in, sometimes you take what you can get, but just make sure the vision aligns, right? And I still go into new partners. I'm in a new one as of last week.
Well, you say things sometimes, but then you like, I'm done buying buildings.
Right.
Or
but then something,
like I said, there's always a deal. There's always a deal.
So, and for the right partner, like this person, I'm like very excited about getting, and I'll tell you, I'm off show because it's confidential, but he's from here. He's not living here anymore, but he's done very well for himself, like very well, like where we want to be, kind of well. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah.
You need
So he got involved in a couple small little investment deals where he just invested some money, got the money back, moving on. But I was like, what do you think about, doing one together, like being an owner? And so he's in. So we're doing that. And it's small, it's again, another I'll never, right?
Yeah, right.
190,000 or whatever. So it's a smaller deal, but it's one that I'm like, this is a guy that's smart. He's interested. He's from here. So he has an emotional impact. He wants to see, a legacy, some of that stuff. And for me, I'm like, let's do this and let's make sure you're comfortable and everything goes good. And then let's do another one, bigger. Let's like do a big one, right? So it's like, I'm going against what I was wanting to like propel myself towards, but I think it's like a stepping stone for him into this world. And I think it makes sense for that reason. So a partnership's the only ship that won't sail. However, I'm on board. I'm on that ship. Like for me, I love getting other people involved. In the right alignment, it makes all the sense in the world. And the biggest real estate firms in the world, like the trillions, like the big ones, it's not a guy.
I get that. I'm just saying, like that's a risk that people don't think about because when you're excited about getting into a deal, all you're seeing is
the end game,
the end of that deal, and all of the success it's going to have. But
so it's time. So the time thing is another thing we want to focus in on with people, right? Like whatever, and I'm guilty. If I tell you it's going to be a 2-year, plan on 4 because shit happens. I mean, COVID, like who would have saw that? You know what I mean? Changes in municipality positions where you've got one person in charge of doing this thing downtown. In our case, it's the overseeing of the development.
Well, that and the revolving loan fund was like something that our city offered that is
currently on hold.
Currently on hold. A change in guard.
Yeah. So there's just a lot of unknowns that you can run into in development that you're counting on. And so buckling up for a long ride, I think, is important. Now, if it happens quickly, and sometimes it does, like sometimes, and I would actually say the norm is it's a pretty smooth situation. And by norm, I'm not saying 99%, but like 65, 70% of the time.
I think so. And I think that,
but it's the ones that when you run into a wall on one, it hurts.
Yeah.
And that time can kill you if you're not careful. Because you have the carry cost, you've got, all the expenses keep coming. The mortgage payment, all of the above. That money still has to be put out. And if you get a year-long pause on something, that can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, and that's why I opened it up, as your portfolio grows. I don't think for the first-time guy, that's like the way to go. Like you don't dive in. To my first real estate experience as a development, that would especially without anybody on my team or in my back pocket or a family member that's done it. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, well, development's hard. So I'm reading that book, Am I Being Too Subtle? That you
Oh, yeah,
recommended
Sam
finally.
Zell?
Yeah, Sam Zell. So he's
Yeah.
a real estate tycoon, and he talks about that.
From
like how,
Michigan.
yeah, he's from Michigan. Well, went to Michigan.
Ann Arbor.
Um,
Student housing is where he started.
Yep. And he talked about, okay, so he had a lot of success with student housing, a lot of success with apartment buildings. So he wanted to get into the development side. And then after 3 deals, he said, there's too much risk in development. Like there's way too many things that can go wrong.
Yep.
That he completely got out of development. And he's still, an amazing, so you got to find your niche too. But small developments are one thing. Taking on the Matthews building as somewhat, I guess that was like your first big deal.
Yeah, and it didn't
An
work
$8
out.
million project didn't work out. It's going to work out to be
It's
something
gonna work.
cool
It's-
anyway, but
yeah.
it's not what not what we envision for sure.
No.
And that's what people don't see is like, yeah, we have these plans of doing something great, but that also means a lot of stuff has to fall into place almost perfectly to make that type of project happen.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sitting. I'm faced with one right now. This is a ground up retail development. So I recently bought a 10-acre site.
You can say what it is, right? I mean,
It's a welcome in.
the welcome in building. Yeah.
Yeah. So we sat down right off the bat. There's a county drain that runs through this site. Okay. They can be moved.
Yep.
Right. And like the very first thing my civil engineer and I did was go and meet and sit down with the county drain commissioner. And because we knew that was an issue, that could be an issue, right? Like that need to be addressed at the.
Yep.
So we did, like right off the bat. And we've got an answer. Like we can do what we're planning, this, that, the other.
But
Well, fast forward 6 months and some things change at the state. And now what he was willing to say he can control now has to get kicked up to the state level, which could add 8 to 10 months to the process.
and that's just time for approval, right?
That's just, yes, that's just approval time. So, and then, there's a lot with that project, that right now is the major one, but I've got some tenants. We've had our calls. They're willing to wait. They want to be in this market. And these are good tenants that I think the community will welcome. But who's got to hold that and carry that cost?
And unexpectedly. Because initially
Unexpectedly.
you did the right thing. You thought you
Yeah.
had a path forward.
Yes.
And now because of some municipality or
Totally out of our
governance
controls.
change,
Yep.
you've got to potentially wait. They say 8 to 10 months.
Which
My
could be
experience
12
said
to
Could be
18.
a year or plus. So
Yeah.
now you have people, when's anything going to be ever done with this? Well, now you kind of get an idea of like why stuff doesn't happen right away because of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And in Michigan, from what I hear, is not bad. Like you try to make a development like that in Hawaii, for example.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like a 6-year process.
Yeah. So for when we closed on that in May, the plan was, by August we were going to be demoing. Well, then we got the grant for the demo because it was a blight situation, whatever. And then now here it is November, almost December. It is December, Friday. And we still haven't demoed it, which would have been nice to have that progress. But as it turns out, it didn't really matter because
Right, 'cause you
we're
gotta wait
waiting on
anyway.
this
Yeah, you
ditch
gotta-
thing
yeah.
now, this county drain thing now. So at the end of the day, it's going to be a good project and it's going to move forward and it's going to work out. But it ain't going to be nearly as profitable as I would have liked
Right.
because the time
Because
is
it-
money,
Yeah.
especially on a project like that.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
talking about millions, hundreds of thousands of
It'll probably
tied
be
up.
close to $1 million that delay will cost, but I bought right and I planned right. And that just means I might break even, but doing something for my community, going back to last episode, legacy and generational stuff. But,
I get asked about that site all
we-
the time, and I'm not involved with that one at all.
Yeah, so
can
now
you
you
talk
know.
about who the tenants are or any of that kind of stuff yet, or is that something?
unfortunately, I can't.
Okay. Bummer. I was hoping that you could put it out there so when people ask me next time, I said, just listen to this podcast and you can get all the
That would
answers.
help us get some views, right? Subscribe. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I can.
I feel like you've already put something out there on Facebook.
Well, I put a drawing of what we were planning on
Okay,
doing.
and people just happen
People were
to maybe
guessing.
guess, and
Yeah,
a couple
I'm not,
guessed
but
right,
I'm not
and-
commenting
Yeah.
on that stuff. The reason is because until the lease is signed, right? Anything can happen. And because of now some of this delay stuff, we have purposely not signed the lease. Like everything's right there at the finish line. The attorneys are happy. Everybody's happy. We just need to now iron down these dates so that we're not getting ourselves in trouble on delivery stuff. Because there's when you sign a lease and it says you have to deliver by this date and you don't, that can bankrupt you.
Yeah.
Like that can ruin
when you're dealing with like those major
Yes, because they've
national brand.
Yeah,
type
because what
companies.
they've done is they've announced on the they're publicly traded.
Yeah.
And they put it out there to their investors that this store is opening. They got to have so many openings because they want to show growth, and so it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So no, I can't yet. But
well, that's good
I've said
insight
it,
too, because
privately to certain people like who we're working with
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So if you call me and ask, I'll probably tell you who we're working with. But I can't put it out there
Yeah.
publicly.
Well, I think that's good to know too, and like the reasoning why, because people, you've always said too, like locally, like the mom and pop shops down here, that it's you want to give them the opportunity to announce it to the world.
Yeah.
But with these big major retailers,
Oh, they're not going to put it in our local anything. So I want to announce it.
Right.
And there's nobody that wants to announce it, put it out there more than me. And I'd love it will break on this. So
Yeah.
so when we can, it will absolutely break on FGW, First Gen Wealth
for
Podcast.
FGW, okay?
Yeah. We're going to have merch too. Let's get some merch.
We know the people.
Let's get some merch. Yeah. So anyway, so when a time's appropriate, and it's unfortunate because we should be there right now. We should be announcing. We've got our site plan approval, that's been done. Like what we want to build has been approved. Like we've gone through that planning process. But we just can't, we're not there yet.
So we've talked about partnerships being a potential risk. You've talked about a couple different like obstacles through the Matthews building, through this Welcome M site.
Yep.
I want to ask you about something that we kind of fought, and it ended up working in our favor that we had to do it. So when we're doing a development, the Foster Coffee and Lily Pearl site, there was an unplanned, pretty significant expense that at the last minute we had not accounted for.
It was almost $30,000. I know exactly what you're talking
so
about.
why don't you just kind of share with like how an unexpected expense can potentially maybe work out in your favor?
Yeah. So for those of local, but it doesn't matter. We had a business next door, a building and a business next door owned by somebody else. So they were adjacent bit properties. The guy that owned the business, the restaurant, wanted to expand into our building. Cool. Great operator, great food. Like everybody loves the restaurant. It's Lula's, for those of you that are local. He wanted to expand into our business and do Lily Pearl's Lounge. Well, awesome. So the problem, what Jim's talking about, is at some point, very recent time, there was a changing
code, fire code
in the code. And because it wasn't the same owner, you couldn't adjoin the spaces, and they fought us. Like they weren't going to let us do it at all. And so we then talked about adding John to our LLC. Remember all that?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the compromise, or I guess the solution that we found within the code was to do these fire doors. And there was 2 fire doors, like $30,000 for the 2 of them. And the idea obviously is, insured by different people. Like there's all these things because they're not the same owners. He was owning this one and wanting to cross over into our building.
Yep. So
we ended up spending the money. There was 4 of us at that time, and we footed that bill. And then
there was a fire.
There was a fire.
Unfortunately,
Lula's actually burned down to the ground, and those fire doors triggered and shut and saved our building.
Yeah. So
without question, our building would have been gone
gone
if those fire doors weren't in there.
Yep. So it's when you look at it from the inside today, there's 2 fire doors. The one on the west had John shuts it at night. So 0 smoke damage, 0 fire damage. It's very, clear as day. The one to the east towards the back of the restaurant, he left open. And the way that those fire doors are designed, once it reaches a certain temperature, it automatically shuts. So at some point before it hit that temperature, you can see where the smoke and the fire came into our building, and then it just shut and completely shut that fire off. It works. It's amazing. Like the design was there, it worked, and it saved our building.
So what happened when we did JCPenney?
Well, yeah, we have a fire door, right?
Yeah, and I was like, let's do the fire door. Do the fire door.
We learned a lesson because it was like $30,000. It's what are the chances? You know what I mean? Like we fought it tooth and nail. Like, no, we want to do and trying to find alternative solutions.
Yeah.
Changing our LLC structure to where we can not make that, not have make that investment, and it literally saved our building. So,
saved our building. Yep.
So another topic for another day is not being underinsured. So we can talk about that. So.
And that's getting more and more difficult because of the cost of that. So that's a probably subtopic of something else when we talk about the expenses associated with real estate investment. So, all right. Well, I'm just trying to think if there's any real quick other stories I can share with some pitfalls. I mean, we've been through them all. I mean, this building that we're in now has had everything in the kitchen sink thrown at it, from a pandemic to municipality changes to
consumers not being able to figure out how to power the elevator for years
3.5 years. Yeah. I mean, you name it, this building's seen it. And so because of that, some partners have come and gone. And now, you were not originally involved, and now here you are.
To save the day.
But hey, here you are to save the day. They're up there, man. They're working.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's great. There's progress happening. We got our first draw request today, so things are moving, and that's wonderful news. So key takeaway for the day for you. What do you think, man?
I think it's a partnership. You gotta it's easy to get involved with somebody because you're friends, because you're family, but you really have to spend the extra time initially to really talk about what the goals are of the product, and trying to predetermine what some potential pitfalls would be, so you know how you're going to handle them. And worst case scenario, what if we have to invest an extra $50,000 that we weren't planning on, whatever it is, but really owning in on what the obstacles are, how you're going to share that responsibility, and having an exit plan. It's okay to have a change in partnership structure.
Yep.
Or you to buy more of my ownership. That's completely okay, but I think it's important, really important, to understand what that looks like going in.
Yeah, and I think that's true. In having those open, really tough, honest conversations with the partners up front. I remember a guy named Brett. We were getting in on a deal, and we were talking about all of these things, right? And he says, "Is this a deal you want to do with me if after 3 months I'm going to have my foot on your throat because we haven't found a tenant?" I said, "Nope, let's move on." So we didn't do it.
Yeah.
We didn't do it. Now, because that particular project was over in St. John's, and I was just like, I don't know. I mean, and in hindsight, I should have taken the risk because it was one that you could have made 7 figures on.
Yeah.
But I wasn't ready to do that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And he's experienced enough to ask that question,
which was wonderful.
Yeah. And you had the wisdom to say,
I don't want that.
I don't want that.
I don't want that. I don't want that. No. So we didn't.
So sometimes the best deal is the one you don't do.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, that's hard to say that. The best deal is the one you don't do.
Yep. There's some deals that if we had,
it's not fun at all.
Well, but just because you don't do that one doesn't mean you're not ever doing one.
Well,
you know what I mean? You're just replacing it with a better one. So yeah, I'll stand by that. Sometimes the best deal is the one you don't do.
Saying no is a superpower. All right. Well, that's a wrap on episode 8. This has been First Gen Wealth. Subscribe, look for the merch. I'm Randy.
I'm Jim. Peace out.
Tune in next time. Not sure what the topic's going to be, but it's going to be awesome.